Good evening. Thanks for joining us. This is NTD Business, and I'm Paul Graney. Game stopped. Shares fall 30% today. Retail investors left out in the cold. Republicans have a new proposal for pandemic spending, but will this one actually go anywhere? And Apple's new privacy settings, to track or not to track. The GameStop dream is over. Shares are down over 30% today. Most hedge funds have reportedly exited their short positions now, so if that's the case, we won't see another short squeeze to drive up the price again. If you came to the party late, it's not looking good. But for some reason, the Wall Street Bets forum on Reddit, where all of this rating has been promoted, is still full of posts telling you to keep buying or holding the GameStop shares. The posts are also telling people to ignore silver and keep focusing on GameStop. But this time, seems not everyone is listening. Discussion about silver started after some posts explained there's also a short squeeze opportunity there too. There are far more promises to supply silver than actual silver bullion on the market. So if retail investors buy up all the bullion, it'll force the price up and hurt the big banks that have shorted it. Investors can also make a tidy profit too. As a result, silver sellers are seeing a boom in sales.
On Sunday, several major dealers reported silver shortages. It's become a popular target for small investors who want to hurt hedge funds like Citadel. The CEO of SD Bullion said on Friday alone it sold nearly 10 times the amount of silver it normally does in a whole weekend. He said they can normally find at least one supplier if they go over, but this time everyone was afraid of a gap up at Sunday night market open. Last week, some of Reddit's Wall Street Bets forums tried to target silver and carry out what one user called the biggest short squeeze in the world. But now others are pleading to avoid the trade because it might benefit Citadel. On Sunday, one user wrote, "Citadel is the 5th largest owner of silver. It's imperative we do not squeeze it." But either way, one expert told Bloomberg that Reddit users would have a hard time making an impact in the silver market. John Feeney said, "Silver's market cap is too large and those on the forums typically want to see quick gains, so I wouldn't read into it too much." But stockbroker Peter Schiff says Reddit users are getting smarter. He said silver stocks are actually cheap and represent good investment value. The fact that some investors were foolish enough to short these stocks makes their trade even better.
And Peter Schiff told me today could be the best day ever for silver sales at Schiff Gold. A lot of smaller buyers and a lot of new customers. I asked him then, what makes this any different from the GameStop rally?
Silver is a totally different story. Silver is undervalued. I mean, it's way undervalued. And up recently, it was historically cheap in relation to gold. And there is a relatively significant short in the silver market that eventually is going to be forced to cover. I don't know if they're going to be forced to cover now, but I think they will eventually, especially in the futures market, where you have all this paper silver that's traded. People are on the hook to deliver it, but they never have to because the longs never actually want the silver. They're just content to take their paper profits or roll the contracts to the next month. But one of these days, all the people who have bought these contracts are going to actually want delivery. They're going to want the actual silver, and the people who have shorted the contracts are not going to be able to deliver. They're going to have to go into the market to try to buy the silver to deliver it, and it's just not there. And so the price will go up a lot. But people should be buying silver. I think silver stocks for people who are more speculative. I think there's a lot of upside potential there. So I would definitely encourage people to buy into silver, be a little bit more cautious. Don't just run at the market with a market order, and just, get a bad execution, because if everybody tries to buy at once, they jack up the price. So be a little bit more patient, look for some pullbacks, and then, buy a position for yourself. But this is much different than, again, GameStop. I'm worried about all the people who are going to lose money there. I'm not worried about people buying silver as long as they hold on to it. I mean, some people, maybe they rush in to buy it, and then it goes down a bit, pulls back 10 or 20%, they get scared and they sell. Don't be scared. Just don't throw it all in at once. And if you get a pullback, well, average down and buy more, because you're building a position in an undervalued commodity that I think is going to go way up over the next several years.
And what will it take for this day of reckoning to come where people start to ask for their physical silver?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it could happen at any time, I suppose. But, it hasn't happened yet. So sometimes people, get complacent. Just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't happen. I mean, obviously, there's an old saying, Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And clearly, that's what happened to the people who were short GameStop. I mean, nobody expected this, but it happened. And, the people that are short silver are not expecting to be forced to deliver it. But, sometimes things happen that you don't expect.
Last question, Peter. Do you feel, looking at what's happened with the GameStop, maybe even with the silver in this particular short window, it looks a little bit like a pump and dump, at least today. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Do you feel that some of these retail traders are being taken for a ride?
Well, that's what I said at the beginning. I mean, it is a pump and dump. There's no question about it. It's just that some people don't recognize that it's a pump and dump. And not all the pumpers are in on it, right? There are a lot of people who actually believe that they're going to make money, or there are people who don't care if they lose money because they're fighting for a cause, right? It's like it's a just cause. And if we have to lose money to stick it to the Wall Street fat guys, well, we're willing to do it. But as I said, behind the scenes, I believe there is a calculated effort by some people who want to make a lot of money. And the way they're doing it is by suckering in all these small investors to force them to get the hedge funds to cover their shorts so that the price can go way up so that they can dump the shares that they already own, right? So you buy a bunch of stock in GameStop, and then once you've got a position, then you start encouraging other people to buy. And your goal is just to sell what you own, right? But you don't come out and say that. You don't say, hey, guys, why don't you help me make a lot of money? Because who's going to want to do that? No one's going to lose money just to help some other rich guy get richer. But if you turn it into a cause, and it's like the little guy against corrupt Wall Street, but you also can convince unsophisticated people that, hey, we can squeeze these shorts and the stock price is going to go up and you're going to make a lot of money. People don't realize you don't make the money until you sell. And just because your brokerage statement says that the stock has got this high price, it doesn't mean anything until you sell it. And the problem is when you have all these little guys that are now going to have these brokerage accounts and they have these big paper profits, when they all want to get out to actually realize those profits and now go buy something, the profits won't be there because all the selling will collapse the price because there are no real buyers there because the prices are too high. No real investor is going to overpay for these stocks. So when the short squeezers want out, there's nobody to get in.
Yeah, incredible. Peter, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Some Republicans aren't happy with President Biden's CCP virus spending package, so they're proposing their own. It's smaller, still $600 billion, and more targeted, but it might be a non-starter. Democrats say they can move forward alone if they want. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
On Monday, 10 Senate Republicans unveiled their $618 billion virus relief counterproposal to President Joe Biden's nearly $2 trillion pandemic relief plan. Some Republicans have questioned the overall price tag of Biden's proposal, while others have urged more targeted measures. The cornerstone of the slimmer Republican package is $160 billion for direct pandemic response. This includes $50 billion for a massive expansion of testing, $30 billion for a disaster relief fund, and $20 billion for a national vaccination program. The plan also calls for an extension of the $300 weekly unemployment insurance boost until July, at a cost of $130 billion. The Republicans are also proposing a round of $1,000 direct payments to American families, which is lower than the $1,400 stimulus checks Biden has proposed. The Republican package also proposes $50 billion in aid to small businesses, $20 billion in child care grants, and $20 billion to reopen schools. The 10 Republicans were expected to meet Biden at the White House on Monday to chart a way forward in light of competing visions for the relief package. The House and Senate are on track to vote as soon as this week on a budget resolution. It would lay the groundwork for passing an aid package.
Do we even need another stimulus? A new report says the U.S. economy could get back to pre-pandemic levels as early as the middle of this year. Well, we definitely need more optimism. It could be helpful for Republicans who agree no more stimulus is needed. But the report also says the job market won't recover for 4 years. The projections considered the effect from the recent stimulus bill signed by former President Trump, but not the new Biden proposal. It also cautions that the projections are highly uncertain because of the speed of the vaccine rollout and the new strains of the virus. And stocks closed higher Monday, recovering some of the lost ground from last week. The Dow was up over 229 points or 0.76%. S&P 500 rose 60 points or 1.61%. The Nasdaq gained nearly 333 points or 2.55%. Wow. And Apple's CEO isn't happy that some apps are collecting so much user information. So now iPhone users will have to give permission to allow apps to track them. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
Apple is set up to introduce a new privacy update that will give users the option to choose if they want to be tracked by an app. Tracking will require explicit consent.
If a business is built on misleading users, on data exploitation, on choices that are no choices at all, then it does not deserve our praise. It deserves reform.
Cook says bad content is juiced up by algorithms that aim to collect user data.
At a moment of rampant disinformation and conspiracy theories juiced by algorithms, we can no longer turn a blind eye to a theory of technology that says all engagement is good engagement, the longer the better, and all with the goal of collecting as much data as possible.
Facebook says it will begin rolling out a notification for iPhone users globally about how data is used for personalized ads. And Apple will release their operating system update requiring explicit consent for user tracking this spring. Reporting by Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Could you live without Google search? Australia's Prime Minister says Microsoft's Bing search engine thinks it can fill in the gap if Google pulls out of Australia. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison spoke to Microsoft's CEO over the weekend about filling the Google gap. That's if Google terminates its search services in Australia.
I tell you, Microsoft's pretty confident. When I spoke to Satya the other day, there was a bit of that.
Google has threatened to pull its services if Australia goes ahead with plans to make tech giants pay for news content.
Look, these are big technology companies, and what's important to Australia, I think, is that we set the rules that are right for our people.
Both Google and Facebook failed to reach an agreement with Australia's domestic media on revenue sharing.
And having a news environment in this country that is one that is sustainable and is supported commercially, then this is vital to how democracies function.
The Australian newspaper reported that although Microsoft's search engine Bing is the second most popular search engine there, it holds less than 4% market share. Google says it has a 95% market share. A Microsoft spokesman said, "We recognise the importance of a vibrant media sector and public interest journalism in a democracy, and we recognise the challenges the media sector has faced over many years." Google declined to comment about the news. Facebook, which is also affected by the code, reached out to Australia's treasurer over the weekend.
No, Mark Zuckerberg didn't convince me to back down, if that's what you're asking.
Australia's Prime Minister also said he'd like to see more alignment between the world's economies on antitrust and competition policy issues. Reporting by Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Still to come. Toys R Us closes its last 2 stores in the United States. Its parent company says it's changing its strategy to get more traffic. And United Airlines warns thousands of workers that they could be furloughed. Now, aviation unions are asking Congress for billions and more aid. That and more after the break.
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Shenyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
Toys R Us are closing more stores. Only 2 locations were left in the United States after True Kids bought the retailer in a 2018 liquidation sale. Now the company says the locations in New Jersey and Texas are permanently closing because of the pandemic. True Kids now plans to focus on other platforms to increase traffic. It says the Toys R Us website is still working and more than 700 stores outside the United States are still open. And in early 2020, the CEOs of Exxon and Chevron discussed combining the 2 largest oil producers. It would have been the biggest merger of all time. Fred Kadamai reports.
It would have been the biggest corporate marriage of all time. A $350 billion merger between oil giants Exxon and Chevron. Sources say CEOs of the 2 oil giants talked in early 2020 about combining their 2 companies. Those discussions did not lead to a deal, but they indicate just how much pressure the 2 companies faced as the health crisis slammed oil demand, sending crude futures into negative territory in April. A Saudi-Russia price war also caused the value of oil to crater. A source said the CEOs sought massive cost cuts to help their companies weather the market downturn. After the talks bore no fruit, Chevron went on to buy oil producer Noble Energy for $5 billion. A proposed merger would have faced an intense antitrust review by justice officials. Exxon and Chevron declined to comment. The White House and the Justice Department did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
And Ryanair says it's headed for a record loss. Says the global health crisis, quote, wreaks havoc with travel demand. Julian Satterwith reports.
Ryanair says it is headed for a record loss. Europe's largest budget airline said Monday that it could lose close to €1 billion in the current financial year. That is just over $1.2 billion. If confirmed, that would be about 5 times its previous worst loss, posted in 2009. The forecast comes after new lockdowns around Europe saw Ryanair passenger numbers slump 78% in the last 3 months of 2020. It now expects to fly between 26 and 30 million passengers over the 12 months to the end of March, down from 149 million in the previous financial year. But Ryanair still sees growth opportunities amid the havoc. It's widely seen as one of the carriers best placed to weather the global travel slump, not least due to a healthy cash balance. As of the end of December, the airline said it still had cash on hand totaling €3.5 billion, or about $4.25 billion. Late last year, Ryanair ordered an additional 75 Boeing 737 MAX jets, marking the largest order for the plane since it was grounded after 2 fatal crashes. The MAX has now been cleared to fly again, and Ryanair says it expects to have at least 24 of them in time for the key summer season.
And United Airlines says it warned some 14,000 employees about possible furloughs. It says once a second round of payroll support expires, airlines could be forced to make drastic new cuts. United told employees that despite the vaccines, demand for air travel still hasn't risen. 2 union leaders representing 75,000 flight attendants have asked lawmakers to extend the payroll support program. They hope Congress will give another $15 billion to fund jobs through at least September 30th. Union leaders say the alternative is mass layoffs starting April. And facial recognition technology is gaining ground in France's police force. But it has some people and institutions just a little bit worried. Our France correspondent David Vivez met with an expert who says the situation could soon resemble that in China.
Demonstrators remained on the streets of Paris as darkness fell on January 30th. The city saw yet another day of protests on Saturday, voicing opposition to a controversial security bill. If passed, the law would give security forces more access to surveillance tools, like drones and facial recognition software.
It's like a sci-fi movie. You're going to airport, a machine scans your face and can confirm your passport. This technology was tested 1 year ago by a French company in Kazakhstan. The company is linked with the Minister of the Interior.
Virag says the pandemic paved the way for French authorities to set up their surveillance measures. Virus contact tracing was already in place, but more technology might extend how people are tracked. Virag refers to a book called The Great Reset, written by Klaus Schwab and Thierry Malret. Klaus Schwab is executive chairman of the Davos Economic Forum. His book proposes new theory on what Western countries should be like after the pandemic is under control. He suggests total surveillance of the population for what Schwab calls their own safety.
It's not about tracking you for 1 day or 1 week. It's about how to track you all the time, everywhere. In his book, Klaus Schwab says Western countries should copy China and track people in their daily lives when they're on the streets, etc. We're totally in George Orwell's 1984, saying, in the name of people's protection, they should be constantly monitored.
China already operates a vast surveillance network, with about 20 million cameras installed across the country. Chinese tech companies also dominate the global facial recognition market. Telecom giant Huawei has already equipped 200 cities across the globe with this kind of technology. In France, facial recognition software was used by police, even when it went against EU law. But in November 2020, the State Council approved its use, meaning it will likely be part of new police surveillance tools. Reporting by David Vivez, NTD News.
Spooky. Still to come this evening, Dunkin's has a special offer this month. If you like their coffee, stay with us to find out how to get it. And food delivery everywhere is thriving during the pandemic. We take a look at one city in Brazil and how restaurants and workers there are benefiting. More on that when we return.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
If you need a little boost to get through the cold Monday mornings of February, Dunkin has brewed up a special offer just for you. Starting this Monday, Dunkin' Donuts Rewards members can get a free medium coffee with any purchase. To get the free cup of joe any Monday in February, DD Perks members can order ahead via the Dunkin' app, or they can show their loyalty ID QR code at the window or the register. And Dunkin' says it wants to reward its loyal customers as they head into the home stretch of the winter. It's also hoping they use the promotion to sample new flavors like Dunkin' Midnight, which has a taste of cocoa. And food delivery is booming in one of the biggest cities in Brazil. One restaurant even saw a 10-fold increase in delivery revenue. NTD's Christina Kim has the story.
With virus measures in place for almost a year now, many restaurants in Rio de Janeiro have gone bankrupt or are struggling to survive. Others have turned to food delivery to save their businesses, creating hundreds of new delivery jobs. Many unemployed workers are now applying to work in delivery through delivery apps.
Until now, many people who were not working in delivery started to be delivery workers because of the increasing demand for delivery.
Batista works in a tropical beach food restaurant in the morning until afternoon before joining other delivery drivers at the Ella Pizzeria. The owner says his delivery income has increased 10 times during the pandemic. Seeing the success of his pizza delivery, he opened a new branch in a different neighborhood and believes this trend is here to stay.
We saw the opportunity to open one more place, as we saw that our delivery was going very well.
Like other parts of the economy, the pandemic has transformed businesses. Some say these changes are likely to continue for years to come, especially with services like home delivery that have become popular among customers.
That's the latest business updates for today. You can still catch NTD Evening News at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.